Hey guys, Will Terry here, and today's video is going to be called "Why Do My Clients Work Me Like a Puppet?" And I really like that title. You know what? On my last video, if you saw it, I realized I sounded really flat afterwards. I mean, this was the final one for Comic-Con, Salt Lake Comic-Con, and I was getting a cold, so that's my excuse. I really was. And I think that whole week with allergies and the everything coming up was just too much. But I'm going to be animated on this one because I'm feeling great. Okay, so I'm going to try something new before I get going, and that is I'm thinking, I still have a lot of topics that I want to make videos on, but I also want to include people because I know that a lot of people ask me questions on Facebook and Twitter and different and on the comment section below here in the videos. And so I thought maybe I'll do it a little bit more organized and just say, let's use Twitter. And my Twitter handle is WillTerry333. It's in the description, so you can check it out there. And let's use hashtag AskWillTerry. And if you have a question that you want me to answer, what I'll do for the very next video is so if you're coming to this late, if you're not a regular, if you're not staying up to date, I will have already done the video, so it won't help to send in questions later. And I'll do it from time to time, but I want to have scheduled videos that with the agenda that I want to do. But other times I think it'll be fun to do question and answer videos. So if you have any kind of a question, what I would suggest though is look back at the library of videos that I've already made, and I'm going to be looking for questions that I haven't covered before, or questions that are really provocative or just unique in some way where I really feel like they'll help the most amount of people. And so and it could be anything. I mean, like if you want to know how old my dog is or something like that, you can ask stuff like that too. Well, I'll just make a video on the very next one and we'll just answer those. Okay. One more thing, I think. Let's see. Yeah, two more things. Isn't it great? Isn't it a great time to be alive? I'm just I'm happy tonight. I mean, we got YouTube. What could be better than YouTube? And we got Google Images, so that whenever you're trying to draw something, you just dial up Google Images. Now, if you're 15 years old or so, you're thinking, well, we've always had Google Images. I haven't, and they're really cool. And the iPad Pro is going to be coming out. So, man, life is awesome. The other thing is just a quick little plug for SVS. We just launched How to Ink, which Jake Parker did for Inktober. Now, again, if you're coming to this video late, that doesn't really help you a whole lot. But right now it's October. And that a lot of people have really been responding to that one, trying to learn techniques to ink for that. And then also Lee White just launched his video called Visual Storytelling Techniques. So if you want to check out SVS, it's in the link below in the description there. Okay, so why do our clients work us like puppets? When you put a puppet on your hand, I probably should have had a puppet, right? You get to control it and basically make it do whatever you want. And that's what happens with us, right? Sometimes our clients feel that they can work us like a puppet and make us do whatever they want. And that's what this video is going to be about. Okay. The reason our clients work us like a puppet, there's basically three of them that I could think of. One, they don't understand how art is made. They don't understand art or how it's made. Two, they can't draw. And three, we let them do it. People that don't understand art are more likely to try to control art. Because I know that most of the people who are watching this video are artists. You already understand that when you try to control it, it ceases to be art. And it usually, I'll say usually, I'm dealing with generalities here. But often the artist loses their passion for creating the art, right? We lose that drive to create something because it's not ours anymore, it's someone else's. And so you might be thinking, well, isn't that the problem or the nature of illustration. I mean, like as an illustrator, that's our job. We're supposed to do what other people want. That's the whole gig. I mean, if it wasn't for that, we'd be fine artists, right? We'd be gallery artists. We'd be doing whatever we want and then trying to find a market for it later on. But the difference between illustrators and gallery artists is that we wait for the assignment first, and then we create something to satisfy that assignment. Gallery artists create whatever they want, or they think they're creating whatever they want, but they actually have to create what their audience or their gallery owner what the gallery owner has brought them in to do. So if they have a style that they love doing, this is my little rant on gallery artists, and then they get let into that little club, they have to keep performing that circus act, and they have to keep doing that same style or stay within those bounds. If it's somebody that's doing, for instance, a landscape painting, and then that landscape painter says, "Hey, I'm doing portraits now. I want to throw some portraits." The gallery might say, "Well, we can't sell those. Our clients are looking for your landscapes. That's what you're known for." So that's what I mean by that. They get stuck in a rut just like we do. A lot of times they don't like to admit it, but they do. Okay, so our clients do not understand how art is made, and they try to control it. They're frustrated because they can't draw. If they could draw, they wouldn't be hiring us. They would be doing it themselves. And 3, we let them because we don't stick up for ourselves sometimes. Now, what I'm mostly talking about here are if we separated clients into 3 groups. So if we said the top tier are the best clients, right? They pay the most, and ironically, they usually give you the most freedom. And so the room at the top is usually really nice a place to be. In the middle ground, it can go either way. They can be a really good client or they can be a really crappy client as far as being controlling of the art. And usually at the bottom, it's mostly control. It's mostly amateur hour. It's mostly new people getting into some sort of a publishing business or some kind of a business where they need artwork. Maybe it could be any kind of business, but they're usually new and they usually haven't done this very many times. It could be Aunt Sally. It could be somebody that wants you to illustrate their children's book, a family friend, or someone that found you on. I know I pick on Elance and Odesk, and it's kind of funny because I was trashing on it in one video, and then I had somebody message me and tell me, and I really apologize if you're watching this video because I can't remember the exact job that you got, but it was a top tier job. It was like an amazing job. And they're like, "Hey, just by the way, wanted you to know that Elance actually does," it might have been Odesk or Guru, is that one? But anyway, they got this amazing job. So good jobs do come through those, but I like to pick on it because usually you're talking about with those bidding sites, what you're dealing with is people who will fit anybody into that slot. They just want artwork drawn, and they don't really care who it's by. And what you really want to work yourself up to is where someone wants your style and they're willing to negotiate with you because they see your style selling their fill in the blank, and they know that they're going to make money off of you or they have a good feeling that they're going to make money off of you because of your style. And so, but anyway, that bottom tier is where I'm trying to remember where I'm going, but that bottom tier is where the worst jobs come from and the most controlling jobs, right? Now, just a side note to all this, one of the things that I do personally to combat the controlling artist is when I go to a restaurant, if I go to a nice restaurant, I have done this before when I can. I don't go to nice restaurants that often, but when I do, sometimes when the person comes along, I like to ask them, what is the chef's specialty? What do they do the best? And sometimes there's a certain restaurant that I go to where the chef will sometimes come out and talk to the clients and when it's not busy. And I have said before, hey, make me something that you really love. Make me your best thing. I'm going to judge you by what you think is your best dish. And I'll probably end up loving it. It's going to be an adventure, and at least I'll know what your best thing is that you can create. And I haven't been let down so far. I think when we go in and we try to control an artist, we tell them to make something in a way that they know is stupid, but they have to do it anyway because we're telling them to do it. It's the same thing. Whenever I've gotten haircuts in the past, I go into the hairstylist and I've said, they say, well, how do you want your haircut? I'm like, you know what? You do this all the time. Just make me look good. You know what I mean? Like, don't mess it up too bad, but do what you think would look the best. And I've not been disappointed there too. Giving up that kind of control is actually liberating, and more people should try it. If I'm getting a doodle or trading a doodle from another artist or getting them to do something for me, do your best. Do something that you really care about, something that you think is fun, and I'll love it. Relinquish that control. So basically in this video, I'm also talking to new artists because new illustrators seem to have the problem where they're getting worked like a puppet more than the veteran illustrators and the established illustrators, although it can still happen. And so I want to talk about why we allow our clients to walk over us. One, we give our clients all the power in the relationship for basically two main reasons. One, we really, really, really want the money. And look, I'm not judging anybody. I have done this before. When you're scared and you're operating under fear, you'll do a lot of crazy things. We're also afraid that if we don't surrender the power to the client, that the client is going to go with someone else. So the reason that we typically allow ourselves to get walked on as illustrators is because of fear. Basically, fear of money, of loss of money, fear of losing the job. The client won't like you, won't want to work with you in the future because you're hard to work with or something. And I think another reason that I didn't put on this list is just basically a lot of people, when they're new, when they're young, maybe you're in your late teens, early 20s, or even in your 30s, and you haven't worked with clients before and you're not really sure how it's supposed to go. And so maybe you maybe in your mind you say, let's just let the client drive the ship, and that way everything's going to go all right. Well, it's not. It's not going to go all right. In fact, it's going to be a disaster. And in fact, you're not going to gain the respect. So what we're talking about is a proposition where we're trading our time and our skill for money. And that's really the relationship that we have with our clients. We want the money. And there's other motivating factors in there. And I did do a video called How to Price Your Artwork that you should check out because I talk about a lot of motivators for actually taking on assignment work. Excuse me. But ironically, when you don't respect your own abilities, your client won't respect your skills either. So if you don't come off as confident and as in control of what you can do as an artist, then the client is going to think in their mind, well, I better take over because this artist doesn't know what they're doing. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just fake it, right? You've got to have a game plan. You've got to do your homework, and you've got to learn a little bit. So I've got some things here for you to try, but just know that, I'll tell you a story really quick. I didn't have this on the list, but I'm going to work this in. I taught school in California. I taught at a high school, just a part-time class back in what years was that? Probably 2005 and 6, I think. And I just did it for 2 years, and it was great fun. In fact, I still have some of my students from those from the senior classes are still on my Facebook friends list. Some really, really fun people in that class, in those classes. And then when I first started, the principal, because I was new to teaching in high school, and I was like, I don't know how to really do this, and I was teaching Photoshop. I had a computer lab, and so I said, I was kind of going in there and going, well, okay, so I'm just gonna basically just start class like I remember high school was way back when. And the piece of advice that the principal gave me was, be a real hard ass, on the first 2 weeks. Just go in there and start kicking in teeth and knocking chairs over, and you got to get their respect. You got to wake them up and kick one person out of your class, and that'll really teach them. And I'm thinking, that's not me. Like if I did that, I think they would look and see right through me. Because that's just not my style. I know it works for some teachers, and they can really wake people up that way. It's just not me. I prefer to try to influence and win friends via being kind and basically laying out the honey. You get more bees with honey kind of a thing. And so I didn't do it. And I still had a great class. And I actually had to kick one kid out because, and ironically, he's a Facebook friend and he's just a really cool guy. And we're awesome right now. But it's funny because he needed it, and he was begging for it, and so he got it. Okay, let's see. So I guess the reason I'm sharing that story is I'm basically saying, don't try to be someone that you're not, but be prepared. So that's a better way to be, is, be prepared with a game plan of things that you're going to say in your own style, but try to understand this, that your client literally will respect you more if you start to educate them in a kind way, through some of these things that I'm going to list out here. They will see you as someone who is professional, someone who's done this before, even if you haven't, someone who knows what they're doing and knows how to avoid problems, and they're going to feel a lot more confident. Now, there are some hard cases out there where you might try this and it still won't work, but don't ever give up for lack of trying, right? I mean, like you've got to still try to do this because it's going to make your life a lot easier. So it's not foolproof, but it will work on some people. Okay. So I'm going to go through the list of things that clients do to work us like a puppet, because I think these are kind of funny, and they're sad, but funny in a sad way. So some of the things that they'll say is, I'll know it when I see it, right? And that has to be one of the most ridiculous statements that someone can make when they're asking you to create artwork. I'll know it when I see it. Well, if you can't visualize it yourself, we're, as artists, we're not magicians. We're not we don't conjure stuff. We don't have a different brain. If you can't even describe what you're thinking, we're not there with you, And something that you might want to do as a if you're ballsy enough, is basically share this video with a client. I did make another video way back last year, a video to share with your clients, which is where I'm really talking directly to your client. But you can share this one too. I mean, and just say, look, this is from someone who has illustrated advertising and editorial work and children's books for over 20 years. So I've definitely seen a lot of work and had to avoid a lot of these pitfalls. But trust me, you can't visualize something. If your client says, I'll know it when I see it, just start sketching. Do not start there. Say, you have to provide me with a description, a narrative that I can then read, comprehend, start to visualize, and then draw. That's the process. I'm not going to be able to just read your mind, and we're not going to play sketch guess, where I sketch and I guess, and then you tell me if I got it right, and then I sketch again, and we're not going to play that game. So that's one. Two, your client might say, the character doesn't look like I had envisioned. This actually beats the first statement. This is more stupid than the first one. No one cares what your vision of the character is. That's on you. That is an amateur author or an amateur client thinking in a dumb way that what they're visualizing is what other people are going to visualize when they read the same story. And I'm talking about children's books here, but this could apply to an advertisement too. Now, there's a difference between a description of a character in a book and how that actual character looks. So an example might be, the character might be described with black hair. It might be an Asian person, and the person might be tall and skinny. And so you draw an Asian person with black hair, tall and skinny, and the facial features might look a little different than the client envisioned. And they're saying, no, I envisioned, more higher cheekbones or something. No, we don't play that game either. This is your interpretation as an artist, and you get to make the interpretation of what the characters look like. Again, I'm going to give you some advice on how to actually discuss this, but that's another humdinger. Number 3, after you send in sketches, right? So you've already sent in sketches. Hey, after looking at your sketches, I thought it would be nice to have a pink car, a pig playing a banjo, and a goat jumping over the moon. Okay, so this is called scope creep. I've talked about this in another video. And this is basically what happens is your client has set you up to fail, because what your client has done is your client gave you a description. You then made a sketch based on that description. You sent in said sketch. And then your client is in the mode of like creating while you're sketching. So they're blowing through your time because now they want you to add things to the sketch. That's called scope creep. And illustrators typically, any established illustrator charges extra for that. That's not how the game is played. So just so you know, that's not right. So if your client's doing that to you, that's wrong. And the reason that it's wrong is because it's unfair to you, because they're wasting your time asking for things. And this is based on the fact that unless they're paying you hourly, okay, but most illustrators get paid per project. So if you're getting paid per project, they're just wasting your time because you couldn't have satisfied that sketch in the first place, because now they're adding things to it. Okay. Another dumb one is, the client informs you that Cindy's hair is blonde, Bobby has purple shoes and a green shirt and a blue hat, the dog has a green scarf, and the house is green, to make it a nightmare for you to separate the values. So you've got green on green on green on green. Your client should not be making color choices, except if you're illustrating a book or a comic or something that is a publishing project or a game, or something that where having a green shirt matters to the story. A good author leaves out superfluous details and only puts in the details that are important to the story, because a good author knows that in order for the artist to create, they're going to run into these color problems that they've set up for arbitrary reasons. So a good editor will tell the author, if the author doesn't know, and will instruct them, hey, let's leave out some of these color descriptions. They're superfluous. In fact, a lot of editors probably, I would assume, pass on manuscripts where the author is like super controlling on dumb details that don't make a difference in the story. So if you're dealing with a higher end client, you're going to run into that much less, because those problems are going to be weeded out before the story gets to you. If you're dealing with lower end clients, that is a problem all the time, where they start making these arbitrary color choices. And then if you understand color and color schemes and color harmony, you realize that if someone chooses a lot of red arbitrarily, and then there's a reason to have red in a scene, maybe it's a heart, which is a symbol that means something, or maybe there's blood in the scene or something that also has to be red. It's going to be a real problem if there's a lot of other red in there, because the red is the color that gets a lot of attention and creates a lot of focal points, and you're going to have problems with your color harmony. And then the last one is, can you make it nighttime but make it really bright outside, because this is a children's book and we don't want it to look too dark. Okay, so nighttime is typically darker. It doesn't have to necessarily be black, but it's going to be dark. In order to have light, you have to have dark. And so it's always funny when clients are like, why do you have to have dark in there? These dark colors. And it's like, well, I mean, the paper is white. We could just leave everything white and then it's super bright, Can you guys tell I have a little bit of attitude on that? So, bottom line, you need to set boundaries ahead of time, okay? And so this needs to happen when you have your first real conversation about the artwork. I probably wouldn't bring these kinds of things up when you're negotiating to get the job, or when you're doing a test image to get the job. Hopefully you're getting paid for that test. But this is after you've landed the job, and then you need to have a conversation with your client. This is not something that should be done through email. If you're not good on the phone, you need to start practicing and talking to people. And just know something too, is that when you talk to a client, you're thinking, and this is so funny because you're thinking that they've been doing this forever. And they're thinking, this person's probably been doing this a long time. And so often the artist is afraid of the art director, and vice versa. They're afraid to get on the phone. One of the reasons, and one of my pet peeves, is we've started texting, and don't get me started on that, but because we live in this world where we don't call anybody anymore. We don't talk to people. But your art directors are probably young. A lot of them are very young, and they don't really, I've noticed lately, I'm dealing with a lot of young art directors, and they don't like getting on the phone. They're intimidated being on the phone. So just know that if you're feeling intimidated for being on the phone, they probably are too. There's a good chance they are too. So you just want to have an easy conversation. This is not going to be hard stuff. Okay, the first one is, let's see, and I've got these out of order a little bit, but so this is to establish how you're going to work with your client. Okay, so one, you're going to be very kind but matter of fact. So there's tact. You can't go in there kicking in doors and just saying, okay, look, this is the way it's going to work. Just use your best judgment. But you're gonna say, hey, maybe say something like this. Hey, when I've worked with clients in the past, some of the interactions have gone really well. In fact, most of them do. Every now and then there's some problems, and so I like to talk about the way that works best for me, and then you tell me, what works best for you, and we'll try to figure out how this thing's going to go. Because again, I'm talking to you if you're working for really low-end clients, and they don't have a clue really how things are supposed to go. Sometimes it's their first go around, and so they need to be instructed. And sometimes they have it in their mind that, and the reason I know this is because it used to happen to me, but I get letters from people all the time. Is this really how it's supposed to be? Where the client is telling me that they're supposed to get all the artwork, and I'm supposed to just draw everything they want and keep drawing everything they want until they're satisfied. Because I've been doing like 4th and 5th and 6th rounds of sketches, and it's not working. And so anyway, I think it's good to tell them, look, let's just talk about what works, and kind of start the conversation out that way. Number 2, tell them that you make your best art when you're allowed to make artistic decisions on character interpretation, color interpretation, or color choices, and the way that the setting or the scene looks, right? So it's your interpretation. They're hiring you. Let them know that they're hiring you because they've seen what you do in your portfolio and you like it, and tell them, if you want me to create the stuff that I do in my portfolio, then you're going to need to give me free reign on how to create, because that stuff that I have in my portfolio wasn't created by an art director telling me what to do. That was me making those choices. So I do my best work when I'm given freedom to create. Okay, and so that would be one thing that I would tell them. Number 3, explain how a previous job took much longer than expected because the client had expectations. And you can ask for sample photos and say, what I found works is if you send me photos of, and let's say, I'm just going to throw out an example here. Let's say your job takes place in the desert, or the scene takes place in the desert. And let's say it's a log cabin in the desert, and there's cacti around. And so you might say to your client, hey, if you don't care, I like to come up with my own interpretation of the desert and the kind of cactuses that I draw. And your client might say, well, I kind of want certain things. You can kind of get a feel for it. And if they start acting like, no, they don't want to give you that control, then say, well, then I need you to provide me with like some Google images of what you're thinking about. Because it's always easier like for me as an illustrator, I like drawing saguaro cacti. I like drawing the prickly pear cacti. It doesn't matter. I like drawing them all. I prefer to have free reign, but if you're set on one type of cactus, I'm fine drawing yours, but let me know before I start drawing the wrong one so that you don't go in and go, oh, I was thinking of this other kind. So that's what you're trying to avoid. You just don't want extra work. You don't want to have to go back in and change everything. The type of cabin that it is it what time frame? When is this happening? You need that kind of material. If you're dealing with a high-end client, they're going to send you that stuff. They'll always send that if it matters, if the period matters, if the type of foliage and the type of structures matter, they will send that stuff along. So ask of your lower-end clients the same thing, right? Number 4, explain, and this gets into sketches. So explain your method of working, and this is pretty typical. So explain that included in your price is a first round of sketches with changes. Okay, so that's what you get for this price. We're going to do a round of sketches, and then you get to make changes on those sketches. That's not additions to the sketches. It's not adding a banjo pig and a fire hydrant and all these other things. It's changes to the existing sketches. So that character is too small. Unfortunately, you chose a close-up view of that character, and we were really thinking of it being more panned out. And the reason for that is this, that, or the other. They should be able to give you reasons, but I wouldn't hold them to the fire. It's very general to do a first round of sketches and then to get into a second round of sketches for that first price. The second round of sketches is not for clients to add things again. It's for them to make little tweaks or little changes. A lot of if you're communicating right with them in the beginning, a lot of your first round sketches should just be approvals. They shouldn't be changing everything. In other words, when I do a children's book, what's typical is I'll do maybe there's 20 or 23 or 4 sketches in the book, and out of those, let's say 24 sketches, they need changes on half of them. And out of the half that they need changes on, probably half of those, maybe 6 of them, are really, really minor tweaks. And then maybe 6 of them have some pretty decent changes on them, and they have reasons, and they'll usually include those reasons. Again, the higher end clients are going to understand that they're going to get your best work if they leave you alone. And that's something that as I would work with a lower end client, I would explain to them, if it's a book, if it's a manuscript, or if it's a comic book, or if it's whatever it is, a game, I would remind them in a nice way, when you wrote the story, I wasn't there making changes on your story, or you were free to create and to dream up and to envision. And now that you've done your job creating art, it's time for me to take over, and it's time for me to make art. But I can't make art if you're controlling me like a puppet. And so you got to figure out a way to say that in a kind way. But one thing that's also helpful to explain to them is to explain how it works in the upper levels. And that's why sometimes I suggest sending a video like this, is so that they can hear it from someone who has been doing it for over 20 years, and they can understand maybe the nuances of the fact that an editor will laugh at an SCBWI conference, which is a Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. An editor will laugh at a prospective author, someone who wants to get published as an author, and almost every conference this question is asked. An author raises their hand and says, I'm really frustrated because when I've worked with illustrators in the past, they never seem to illustrate what's in my head. And the editors love getting those questions because they smack that person down. It's like a backhand. It doesn't matter what your vision is. When the person reads that book, they're going to get their own vision, right? Or they're going to see the characters that the illustrator drew. it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the illustrator drew it. It doesn't matter if it's the author. If the author can illustrate, then it is the author's vision. So there's that. Okay, so it's very customary to get into that second round. It's also very customary to get into a third round that's covered under the blanket of that pricing structure. But the third round is usually tiny tweaks that you just feel like you need to make and send in just to be sure before you start to paint your illustration. Because once you start painting, it gets really hard to make changes. So you just don't want to start laying down any permanent color or rendering or tightening anything up until everything's approved. So the third round is used for minor tweaks. If it's usually the client, I would say, or the illustrator that doesn't understand or isn't paying attention to artist notes, because that happens too. If it's your fault, own it. Don't put that on the client. But if you are doing like major overhauls in round 3, that you're getting into a territory where you might want to start charging, and you might want to tell your client ahead of time, especially if it's a problem client. I charge on the third round if we're making major overhauls, if we're changing a sketch to a different scene. If you just decide, you know what, I don't like that scene, I want to start with a whole different camera angle and a whole different composition, then it's very customary for illustrators to charge on that third round. And definitely the fourth and the fifth and the sixth, and hopefully you don't have to go into those. But just know that your job, when you accept a job for a flat fee of $500, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever that price is, you're not agreeing to work for this person for the rest of your life. That is not the equation. That's not the job that you signed up for. There's a beginning, middle, and end. And once we start breaking through the end, we start charging. And your clients need to know that. Sometimes, it might create a hostile work environment if you just smash them with that right up front. But I think it is good to try to work some of these things into how it works best for you, is talk them through it. Say, what I typically do, even if you've never done this before, just say, this is what I typically do. I send in a first round of sketches. You get to, based on all the stuff we've talked about, it should be really close. Okay. And then you get to make some tweaks and some changes on that, but they should be relatively minor unless I've really misinterpreted the text, and really I need to be given free rein to interpret this text. And for a first time or a beginning client, they need to know they really shouldn't be changing your vision unless they have a specific need that doesn't, where your illustrations are not illustrating the text. In other words, where your illustrations are misleading to the person that's reading the book. If that's not the case, then they're smashing into your vision, and they need to know that they're going to take your passion away, and they're not going to get your best work. They're going to get substandard work, and it's not your choosing to do substandard work, but when your passion goes out the window, you're going to be in the mode of just trying to get it done, and they need to know that. And if you can't tell them, send them this video. So here's one last thing. I know we're kind of running along on this one. That doesn't bother some people, though, because I saw your comments on that. I have worked for clients in the past that have had really, really tiny budgets. In fact, they call up and they've apologized. Hey, we really love your stuff, and we really, just dig it and everything. And we're just wondering, and we know you're probably too busy, or we probably don't have enough money. But if there's any chance and you could do this, we'd really love for you to work on our project. And sometimes they have $50 or $100 or a couple $100 or something like that. And this is the last time I actually did this was over a decade ago, but it works. In that case, you're definitely not doing it for the money, because if $100 is going to be life or death, you've got bigger problems. But $100, it's still money, right? And you still want it. But you ought to get something for that. And so what I have said in the past is I would love to work on your project. And you should never make your client feel like you're doing them a favor and you're begrudging, like, I really shouldn't be doing this, but I think I'll do it anyway. Just, but you're taking advantage of me. Don't take it. Don't make them feel like that. If you take an assignment, I really think that you should be into it and you should make them feel good that you're doing it. But at the same time, you got to say, I need something from you though. And what I need is total freedom. And I have said this to about 3 clients and it's worked every single time. I would love to do your project, but if I'm doing it, I'm definitely not doing it for the money alone. What I'm doing it for is for exposure and for my portfolio and for my artistic fuel, right? To feed my soul. So if I'm going to feed my soul on your small little project, then I'm going to need total freedom. And that means I am going to draw a sketch and I'm going to send it to you in case there's something like horribly, horribly wrong with the mission of your magazine or your book or whatever it is, where I've drawn something that would offend your clients, your readership. But you don't get to make any changes on it. It is only for you to say yes or no. And if you say no, I'm not doing the final, right? So I get total control, but I will send you a sketch that you can say yes or no on. And if you say no, I'm not doing it. And hold to that. It's worked every time. The client has loved the art. It had total passion, and it's a way to get more stuff in your portfolio. Okay, so that's the video for today. I'm not going to remind you to like or comment because I think that's totally lame. And that's it. So I'll see you on my next video.